What's up, guys? It's like day 25 of quarantine here in Peru. Just here in my room. It's about 7:30 at night. Pitch black outside. It's actually a creepy night. Um, but I wanted to just make a little video because I don't know, I'm a little bored. And I get this question all the time. And the question is how has my perspective on the world changed through traveling the world and sort of in engaging myself into different cultures and hanging out with all the people I've hung out with. I've found myself in some very interesting situations that seem like stories out of a book or something like that. Like some of the craziest things I think about. There was one time where we were filming some videos in India, and I still have these videos. I've never done anything with them, but I got some crazy footage that I need to edit. It's from 2 years ago now, so it's just been sitting there. But I flew a couple of my friends out to India to help me with this documentary that we were going to make. That didn't really come through, but we met this guy named Kashi Baba. Kashi Baba's got like these human skulls. He considers himself a gori. And in India, an agori is somebody that they do things like, say for example, things that we are repulsed by, like rotting food or dead bodies or all these like crazy things. They intentionally will go out of their way to fight that craving of disgust. So they'll eat something nasty off the ground, or they'll eat a part of a dead body, or meditate on top of a dead body, or cover themselves in human ash, or carry around skulls. And a really crazy little group of people. Interesting. And so we were hanging out with this guy. We hung out with a couple other agoris, but this guy was like our main agori friend. And he took us on a little boat in the Ganga River, and like behind us there's bodies burning, and Varanasi's a pretty far out place. And he took us on the river to try to find a dead body that he was going to show us how to do this sort of black magic meditation ritual. And he said he'll teach us all of this stuff and let us film it and stuff. So we're like, what the fuck? Like this situation's too crazy not to film it. And ultimately in the end we didn't find any dead bodies, but it was like a crazy little adventure that like had such a build up. Like we were getting into the boat and we were all looking at each other like, what in the fuck are we getting ourselves into? And I find myself in these crazy situations. Or like one time I was in Jordan and I had a rental car, and for some reason I thought this rental car could make it to this camp that was in the desert. So I like drove off the road and starting to go into the desert, and maybe like a mile in I get stuck in the sand in the middle of nowhere in the what's that desert called? Wadi Rum Desert. So I mean this place looks like Mars, and there's no people really around besides like some campgrounds that are like 10 miles that way and 10 miles that way. And luckily these guys pulled over. They saw me and like were like laughing at me like, 'cause I'm a complete idiot thinking I could have made it. And they spoke English, or a little bit of English, which was like so cool. And they didn't have a rope to like tie under my car so they could pull me out. So the guy pulls out this big sword, like an Arabian sword, like that you would see like people fighting with in Aladdin or something like that. And he looks at me and goes, "Now we kill you." And I was just like, And then he like took a second and like looked at me as if he was like kind of serious. And then he just started laughing. I was like, oh my God, man, fuck. And he actually cut his seatbelt off and used his seatbelt as the rope to get me out. And then he took me to his village, had some tea, and then they actually drove me to their campground. So I didn't stay at the campground I was driving to. They had some campground out in the desert, and they took me there, and I stayed there for a night. It was really cool. So I don't know. What do I learn from these stories? I've done some, like I've went and tried to find gurus and mystics and psychedelic plants, and like I'm living in Peru right now, and like we do ceremonies here all the time, especially now that we're here in quarantine. Like they did 2 ayahuasca ceremonies since we've been in quarantine, and I skipped out on both of them. But I'm around this kind of stuff like constantly, like this, just a very like storybook type of situations I find myself in. Like I'm trapped at an ayahuasca center in Peru, and I love it. It's like this has become my home. I've been here basically 3 months, and but what I learned from all these situations of seeking out these thrills and seeking out the mystery and seeking out adventure and being some kind of like little freak amateur anthropologist or something, or whatever kind of crazy ideas I get in my head. Um, I learned that for me, it's like I remember this one time I was in Mexico, and I was in this town called Catemaco in Veracruz. And Catemaco is like this famous witchcraft town. Like the whole town is kind of famous for crazy black magic. They do like a black mass on the equinox where they sacrifice a goat with a big pentagram on fire and stuff. It's a really crazy place. But I've found myself hanging out with this old guy and this Satanist called Jose. This old guy. This is like a normal old farmer, and I was eating like tortillas and beans with him and his wife and this Satanist guy, who was also an amazing guy. He wasn't, just kind of a normal guy actually. And while I was like sitting here with Jose and his wife, and I was just thinking like, man, this is like this simple interaction of humanity. Like I don't really speak any Spanish. They didn't speak any English at all. And it's just like we're sharing this crazy moment. Like, how the fuck? I'm just sitting in some guy's house in the middle of nowhere in Mexico, and like it must be so bizarre for them, and bizarre for me, right? But it's just such a crazy little interaction, and it's like these little moments are the moments that are really spiritual for me, and they're like I really feel a deep connection to what it means to be human and what it means to just like be present in a moment and to just cherish that moment. And it's like nostalgia almost in a way, but living nostalgia. Like it's not in the past tense yet, but it's that same kind of overwhelming feeling of warmth and sort of just just like a really beautiful moment. And I find that those little moments, like those real simple moments, actually mean more to me than the crazy adventures of like going to India and hanging out with a yogi that lives in a cave. And all those moments mean a lot too, and they're great stories. And I feel like stories are what humans are, essentially. What are we? Well, I'm Dakota, and I do this, I do that. We live stories, and that's what we are. And a lot of times we bullshit to make ourselves sound cooler, or we cherry pick the best bits of ourselves. And that's how we've passed down knowledge for generation to generation. It was through storytelling. And in a way, it's almost like living entities, stories are. Like you think about culture and, like the kind of mainstream idea in our culture, like today's Easter. So like the mainstream kind of culture in America and the United States is like Jesus and God created the world and Adam and Eve, and we're all kind of raised with the story, whether or not we really believe it nowadays, but we're all kind of raised with these stories, and these stories shape our perspective of the world. I forgot what I was talking about or how I'm relating that to traveling the world, but yeah, I don't know what I've learned really. It just, I definitely feel like it's some initiation into manhood, like really being forced to be in some crazy situations. Like, being in Mumbai or being in New Delhi or something like that is such a far out crazy place compared to Detroit, where I live. The poverty, the homelessness, the crazy traffic, the people trying to sell you stuff, and it's just you don't ever see anything like that where I'm from. And we got a lot of poverty and stuff like that, but not like it is in India. And India is like my favorite country. So I'm not like saying it's a bad thing. It's just so alien to what I'm used to, where I'm from, where I grew up at. And like being confronted with those kind of things really seems like I'm stepping out of my comfort zone and forcing myself to grow. I find that really, if you really want to grow spiritually, or you really want to grow, like as a person, then I think uncomfortability is the fastest way to do that, to confront the parts of yourself that you typically shy away from and really go head on with them. And you really learn something about yourself when you find yourself in these crazy situations. Like what are you thinking about in these moments? And it really tells you about you. And I think a lot of the times when we're stuck in our towns, when we're stuck in our cities, or wherever we are, we become stagnant, and we kind of lose who we are. Like we all, for example, we'll have a moment where we're like, oh yeah, I remember what it feels like to be liberated, or to be like my old self. Or, we've all had those moments where we're like, oh, I remember that feeling. I remember that feeling. And that's because we become stagnant, and we allow our sort of soul to be sucked out through the culture. Maybe that's what I was getting on earlier with the Jesus stuff, is that, I don't know, but we allow ourselves to just be like, to settle. And I don't think that's the type of species we are. We're not settlers. We are nomadic, forest-dwelling, flower-picking little freaks, little hairless apes that worship the moon and dance under the stars. And, that's who we are. And we've really lost connection with that, We've lost connection with our magic. And we've traded it in for politics and sort of like bullshit identity and fashion and sort of really materialistic things, more about sort of social standards than it is about the mystery of what our place is here in this universe. And maybe that's what traveling does, is, it shows you that everything's kind of bullshit. All the stories that we gather about ourselves and where we're from is all bullshit. Everyone thinks something different. And even though we all are different and we all hold different beliefs and stuff like that, there's such an essence to humanity that is, it's just like really incredible when you start seeing like little kids playing, for example. It's just like, man, little kids are little kids no matter where they are, whether you're in like a mountaintop in the Himalayas or you're here in Peru in a little village or something. And little kids are little kids, and old wise men are old wise men, and old wise women are old wise women. There's these, humanity is humanity. We transcend all these little egotistical material things, and there's like an essence, a oneness that sort of gravitates it all to the center, the collective consciousness in which all of our individual stuff emerges out of. And yeah, again, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about at this point. I was just traveling. How does traveling change my life? It just really makes me feel human. I feel like I'm part of a global tribe, which I am. It's humanity. My friend Jose always says that traveling is one of the things that money can buy that makes you happy. You know how people say, like, oh, money doesn't buy happiness. Well, it can buy traveling, and traveling is like an essential part of discovering who you are through the expression of the other. Alan Watts used to say that I only know who I am through you knowing who you are. Your persona, whether we agree or disagree, is an interaction with my persona, and we reflect back our images to each other. And through your positions, I know my positions. Yeah, I agree with you. Or no, I disagree with you. You tell me who I am, and I tell you who you are, and we are in this infinite feedback loop as we grow and morph into this ever-flowing entity of non-dual separateness. And traveling will bring you to that. Will bring you to that center of seeing yourself in the mirror of the other. Yeah, I don't know. I sound stoned right now. I'm just dehydrated. Well, anyways, yeah. I hope you all are healthy, happy, beautiful. I'm going into town tomorrow at 8 in the morning. It's the first time that I've left, like, Arkana and the garden. I haven't been in town, and I haven't seen a car in like 2 months. So, yeah, this will be interesting. Stay happy out there. Stay weird. Om.